Good morning. It's Monday, July 18th. And President Biden has just returned a day or so ago from his Middle East diplomatic trip. Now, diplomacy in my mind is a very dicey situation. Because when you ask 2 or 3 people about diplomacy, you'll get 10 different reasons why it's good or it's bad. It's extremely difficult to satisfy everybody when you are attempting a diplomatic mission. Because even if you think that things went right, that is only the view in your world based upon your experience. So I think he had a good trip to the Middle East. I don't think it was a great trip. He stopped in Israel. Now, Israel's a dicey place. It's a place where everybody has an opinion. And in Israel, Trump was a much liked man because he was tough. And he did accomplish the Abraham Accords to some extent. So many Israelis favor Trump over Biden right now and over his predecessor, Obama. Now, I thought Obama treated Israel poorly myself. But in any event, Trump and Biden came out, according to the polls, about equal in the minds of Israelis, even though their diplomatic purposes were different. And one of the things that upset the Israelis is the fact that Joe Biden is trying to get back into the Iranian nuclear deal, because he feels that he's got to keep an eye on Iran. And nobody in Israel disagrees with that position, but they don't believe he belongs back in the nuclear. So that piece of the journey, I think, went pretty well. Even though Israel is in a state of flux itself, they're going to have another election, which will be the 5th election in 2 years. And it appears that Netanyahu is still sitting there on the horizon, ready to come back as prime minister. So that's pretty much where Israel stands. The United States is allied with them and has strongly said that. But one of the things that they also said was they want to work and help the Palestinian people too. And I don't know how well that goes over in Israel. So I think everything went reasonably well in the Israeli portion of the trip. And then, of course, he's off to Saudi Arabia, where there are pictures in all the newspapers of him fist-bumping MBS. That's Mohammed bin Salman, the crown prince of Saudi Arabia. He's really running the country. His father, who is the prince, or the king, or whatever they call him, is the real boss. But on a day-to-day basis, MBS is running that country. And there was a lot of speculation as to whether or not Biden would shake hands with him when they finally got together. So the fist bump is a replacement for a handshake, I guess, and they can lean back and say that's the way they did it because of COVID, etc., etc. But Biden has come out very strongly against Mohammed bin Salman with respect to the Khashoggi murder. He believes that MBS sanctioned that murder. And of course that didn't sit well. And then of course Biden has condemned Saudi Arabia for their human rights positions. But this is diplomacy, and what he really wanted to talk to bin Salman, MBS, about is oil production. He's attempting to get the Arabian oil countries and the Arabian cartel to produce more oil to relieve the pressure on this inflationary cycle that the U.S. is under because of the price of oil. Now, I noticed gasoline at $4.37 a gallon. That's down considerably from $5 a couple of weeks ago, and maybe it's going in the right direction, and maybe we don't need that much help from Saudi Arabia. But nevertheless, Biden was there to ask for that. But that didn't stop the criticism against Biden because of the fist bump. There were many in the United States, many of his political opponents, who felt that was too much. That was being too friendly to MBS in view of the Khashoggi incident and in view of several other things that have gone on in Saudi Arabia over the years. They are, after all, an extreme right-wing dictatorship. Even though they recently gave the right to women to drive a car, and Mohammed bin Salman has also severely deny that he had anything to do with Khashoggi's murder. But in the eyes of the world, he ordered it. And then in the eyes of many, Biden should not have fist bumped him. But that's what diplomacy is. You do what you think is right at the moment because you're there not for what happened before, not to correct a whole lot of things, but to get something, to create a relationship that both sides are going to get something out of. And in this case, we're asking for that gasoline production to go up. And I don't know what MBS and Saudi Arabia have in mind, but I'm sure that they want the U.S. to be a staunch ally of theirs, especially with Iran looming over the Middle East. Now, those countries in what I will call the Gulf states are the enemies of Iran. And we are Iran's enemy. And this has to do with the relationship between the Sunnis and the Shia. 90% of the Muslim community is Shia, but Iran is Sunni, and therefore they are enemies. And I am sure that the Saudis are unhappy with Biden's decision to get back into the nuclear deal. But you see, that's what diplomacy is all about. Everybody has an opinion, and there's no concrete solution that anybody can see immediately during the diplomatic process. It takes years for the final outcome to be recognized. And in many cases, even the outcome is not recognized properly. And that's what diplomacy is. It's, to me, like a shot in the dark and hope for the best and get something immediately from it, like the oil. But it's always a long-term proposition. It's making friendships or breaking friendships a very, very difficult process to become a real expert at. So in my view of this trip, it came out good for the United States because I believe that we left with all our allies intact and knowing that we were their ally. And so whatever happens in the future, let's hope that just being allied with these nations that we visited is important and works to our advantage. So I leave you with that this morning, and have a great day. Bye.